Dungeons of Hinterberg is a brand new action role-playing game that's a day one title on Xbox Game Pass. And after playing it all weekend, I think it's almost perfect. Hey everybody, I'm Dylan. Welcome to Beep Boop Loot, where we help casual gamers make the most of their game time, with a particular focus on Game Pass to help you maximize your membership. Today we have another episode of Game Seeking Gamer, where we review the latest games and help you decide if they're right for you. There are no scores, and we strongly believe that a game doesn't have to be a 10 out of 10 for you to have a blast playing it. So with Dungeons of Hinterberg, we're going to cover story, gameplay, performance, how long it takes to beat, and of course, is it right for you? Let's get into it. In Dungeons of Hinterberg, you play as Louisa, a young woman coming to Hinterberg for a little rest and relaxation. She's kind of disillusioned with her life, she's a lawyer, and just the grind's got her down. Millennial angst, am I right? So she comes to the cozy town of Hinterberg, but the real twist here is that Hinterberg recently discovered magic, and there's 25 dungeons that have popped up across all these different regions in Hinterberg, and now tourists are flocking here to come to the dungeons, see them for themselves, and try to complete all of them. I think an important call out here is everything is text in this game. There's no voiceovers. That didn't bother me, but if that's something that's like a non-starter for you, or you're expecting kind of more built-out cutscenes, you're not going to get that here. It is all text bubbles. And even though it is only text, I did read all the text bubbles while playing, so it was interesting enough to not just skip through, but also not really gripping enough that I would say it's a great story or anything like that. But you're in for cozy, laid-back vibes throughout the story. It's not some crazy chosen one story or anything like that. It gets a little bit more intriguing in the back half, but overall it's really just about Louisa coming to this town, ruminating on her life, and playing through these dungeons. So yeah, it's not the reason to play the game, but it's also not terrible either. I also think the way this game's built, it wouldn't make sense to have a really gripping, like, world-ending story, because the whole point of this is you play through your days in whatever order you want, doing whatever you want day to day. Speaking of, let's talk about the gameplay loop. There are two main aspects to the game: dungeon crawling and socializing in town with the residents and tourists. Gameplay takes place across day cycles: morning, afternoon, evening, and night. So in the mornings, you start off with a little cutscene, usually with this one friend named Alex, and you just kind of talk about how your experience is going. That's really the only place in the game where you ruminate on themes and how you're feeling about your time in Hinterberg. It's quite minimal, but it's just a little bit of flavor text to give you a sense of who Louisa was before she came to Hinterberg. After the little cutscene, you're asked where you want to spend your day. There are 4 semi-open world areas you can explore each day. As soon as you make your choice for the day, it moves you to the afternoon, where you're free to explore that semi-open world that you've chosen for the day. Obviously, the main focus of the game is to clear dungeons, so typically that's what you're doing every day. You can rest, and it helps give your character boosts to their stats, but for the most part, you're not going to be doing that. Each of the major areas has 2 unique magical abilities that are central to the dungeon mechanics in that area. Magical abilities are only usable in the area you receive them. So in Area 1, whatever abilities you get there, you can't use them in Area 2, 3, or 4. It might sound limiting, but it's actually a great way to create focus in this game. We'll talk more about that in a second. After you're done clearing the dungeon of your choice, you return to town, where you can choose to spend time with one of many different residents. And there are a lot. Each resident has a friendship level, and progressing this unlocks upgrades for your character. You also have social stats that are improved by spending time with different characters. These stats open up new characters in town to spend time with, which in turn unlocks even more friendship levels that provide more upgrades. Finally, there's night, where you return to your room and can either go to sleep or watch TV or read. TV and reading come with a bonus increase to your social stats, but at the cost of 25% of your health the next day. It's a neat little consequence system where you can boost your stats potentially, but you're also creating a harder day for you the following day. So that's the overview of what the game looks like. Dungeon crawling during the day, socializing in town at night. I want to take some time now and really jump into the dungeons because, oh my gosh, the dungeons. Hinterberg really is Zelda in Europe. It reminds me of all the shrines in Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, but just extended a little bit, and also much more focused than Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild. I mean, most important of all, these dungeons are excellent. They continue to challenge you and open up new ways to use your powers. They're challenging without being frustrating. I've had so many moments where I just wag my finger at the game going, "You clever one, you." Good times. There's no hand-holding here, but it's been designed intuitively enough that trial and error gives you a ton of satisfying aha moments. To kind of clarify what I mean, very early on in the game, one of the first dungeons, you get access to a minecart, and you'll see the footage now where I first get in the minecart and I get stuck in a circle. I keep going around and around and I don't know what's going on. There's no pop-up menu that explains how the carts work, but after a few laps of this ring going nowhere, I fiddled with my thumbstick and I realized you can actually lean in your cart, and so I was able to lean to the right and get out of that loop. There are all kinds of moments like that where the game throws new objects and mechanics at you that you just have to figure out for yourself. If I had to mention a negative, it would be the combat. It definitely gets a lot better than the tutorial first suggests, but it was never something I craved. More just a nice change of pace from the puzzles, and it was never challenging. I actually don't think I died in combat once, and I am not very good. Combat consists of a light and heavy attack, your 2 magical abilities, and attack conduits, which are like your special abilities. You can slot these into different slots on your character, and you unlock and purchase them as you progress through the game. Attack conduits were the best part of combat, and they were super fun to trade in and out to try different abilities. There's also some modding and customization that really makes this feel like an action role-playing game, and again, I will get to that in a second. But yeah, no RPG is complete without that, and this game definitely has that. So yeah, dungeons are about 60% of the time you spend in the game, I would say. They are so good. They're worth the price of admission alone, and if you have Game Pass, you should just download it and try it. But that's only about half the game, so what about socializing in town? If you've never played Persona or another game like that, you've probably never experienced this social sim aspect, and you're probably thinking like, what the heck is this? If you've never done it before and you're really just looking to play through dungeons, it's gonna feel a little bit like an obstacle that you don't want to engage with. But if you're willing to play around with it a bit, there's a really cool system here. So you have a journal in the game, and in it are all the characters and the different unlocks you get for progressing their friendship to subsequent levels. What I really started to enjoy was hunting through my journal for the character who had a really good upgrade I wanted. Sometimes there's a real conflict, like when I wanted to unlock a gear modding feature, but I got distracted by another character who would give me a ton of money if I hung out with her. Is that morally okay? Another important thing to point out, there doesn't seem to be a consequence to how you spend your days. I've read a few different reviews now where people have tested this. There's no set number of days where if you keep playing the game, it just is game over. So there's not really a real threat to how you spend your days. It just delays you from what you want if you choose one thing when you could have picked something else. Again, that reinforces the cozy vibes. There's still choices you have to make, but the relative ultimate consequence of them is not very high. I also noticed that the pacing of this works really well with the characters. You really start to feel as you spend more time with different characters that you're getting to know them better. If you've never tried it before, I think it's a really fun way to create a different sense of progression. But if you're looking for build crafting, Diablo 4 type action RPGs, I think this is going to just be a no-go. But what is here is a really great, engaging, immersive social sim and dungeon crawler. I wanted to talk briefly about progression in this game. There's a few ways to do that. Obviously, social simming is a big part of that. But outside of that, progression comes through finding or buying new gear. There's chests all over the world you can find stuff in, or you can buy it from the vendors in town. You equip charms, which has this like management mini game where each charm takes up a certain number of slots in your bag. And then you can upgrade charms using magical materials to shrink them so you can fit more at a time. And actually, on that note, there are quite a few different materials you collect in the world. They're like these little trails of light, all different colors. Magical materials, trash, monster parts, all of these things have value. There's different people in town you can trade them into for money and different rewards. Little side note, the Monster Club are like the best characters in this game. I don't even really know how to explain it, just roll the footage. See what I mean? You can also add mods to your weapons at the smithy, which does add noticeable improvements to your damage and different aspects of your weapons. And then of course there's the overworld map where all the different dungeons have a number associated with them that's like their relative challenge. So it goes from 1 to 8 and you slowly work your way up to those 8s. Again, I sound like a broken record, but if you're looking for Path of Exile or Diablo 4, this not be it. But what is here is a really good, compelling system that keeps you engaged, tweaking little things. There's just not really enough challenge to justify min-maxing or anything like that. So no review would be complete without talking about annoyances, problems with the game, and there are a few here, relatively minor, but worth talking about. Number 1, this is one of the most egregiously boring tutorials I've ever played. You walk like 3 steps, then there's a cutscene, then you fight a couple guys, and you walk 3 steps, there's a cutscene. It's very painful and sets a not great first impression. But having said that, if you push through that, you're in for a real special game here. It just does not suggest that. Number 2, camera angles are a little bit janky here. That mostly is a problem during combat. Again, it wasn't a common problem, but it happened enough that I noticed it, that I would like lose track of an enemy or in a really tight spot, just like not be able to see right. So that's a little bit annoying, but nothing that really was game breaking. And this one, maybe I'm being a little too picky, but particularly in the first 5 days of the game, I feel like there's a lot of loading screens between different dialogue. Like there's a few moments I can remember where you loaded into your room, had one line of dialogue, and then just another loading screen. I sort of get it because of the day cycles, morning, afternoon, evening, night. but it feels kind of bad, especially in the first quarter of the game. So yeah, overall, my annoyances mostly stem from the beginning of the game, just not doing a great job of presenting what this actually is. I'm not saying this game is for everyone, but for what it is, if you're in the mood for it, it's nearly perfect. Okay, lightning round time with a few frequently asked questions I've seen online. Number one, performance. How did it run? This game is buttery smooth on Xbox Series X, zero issues with it. It's honestly a breath of fresh air. Most games come out with some level of bugs or issues. This was amazing from a performance perspective. How long does it take to beat Dungeons of Hinterberg? How much game time are you going to get out of this? This is an interesting one. I've seen estimates anywhere from 18 to 25 hours. 25, based on my experience, feels like a really long time. I think it's fair to say you're going to get 20 hours out of this game. So from a value perspective, you're getting 20 hours for about 40 Canadian dollars, which is half the price of a regular priced game. I think that's really solid. And a note on replayability, can you play this game again? Sure, but I think the dungeons are where the magic is, and discovering all the different mechanics and how everything works is like 80% of the fun here. So I do think a second playthrough here would lose some of the magic. So let's talk about should you play or should you skip. The number one reason to play this game are the puzzles, and as long as you're okay with puzzles being more of a focus than combat. Again, combat is an excuse to get to the next puzzle, not the other way around. Also, if you're looking for cozy vibes, the coziness here is off the charts. It really feels like you're on vacation in a fantasy world, meeting new people, seeing new things, and it's all so relaxing. If you loved Zelda but felt a little bit overwhelmed by how open-ended it was, this is the perfect compromise here. It's a more focused version of Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom Shrines, and I think for the right type of gamer who's looking for more focus, it's perfect. And of course, this is a day one Game Pass title, so if you're a Game Pass Ultimate member, this is a no-brainer. This is the kind of game that this service was built for. It is amazing. It's something a lot of people probably wouldn't try if they had to pay for the game, so why not download it and give it a go? I think a lot of people will be really happy. But what about if it's just not for you? What are some things to consider that maybe mean you should skip it? So first off, kind of the reverse of our number one point for should you play, do you want action and do you prioritize that over the cozy vibes or more relaxed pace? If you're looking for frenetic action all day, all night, and then for a lot of people, combat's gonna be too easy. For some, that's a great thing, right? I think that makes it more accessible to a lot of people. But for those looking for a challenge, I think the challenge here comes from the puzzles, not really the combat. If you don't like social sims or think they're boring and you have tried them before, you probably wanna skip this. But if you haven't tried a social sim and you're just sort of worried you won't like it, I think most people will be surprised at how engaging the system is and how enjoyable a change of pace it is from the dungeons during the day. And then of course, if you've played Zelda recently and you don't like puzzles or you don't like the Zelda formula, you're not gonna like this game. It's very much a love letter to Zelda, and that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with not liking this. But if you don't like Zelda, you can probably skip this one. So what do you think of Dungeons of Hinterberg? Have you tried the game yet? Are you liking it? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to chat about it. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, consider subscribing to the channel. We'd love to have you around. And if you're looking for more ways to maximize your Game Pass membership, check out this video right here where we round up 15 of the best new games this month on Game Pass. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Dylan. This is Beep Boop Loot. We'll see you in the next one.